Welcome, guys. We're going to get started here real soon, but before we get started, let's take a quick look at a brief commercial of some models I have online at Gumroad and Fab. All right, let's dive right into it. So today is in honor of Easter, and what I wanted to do is bring in some reference images here to look at in terms of what we could build. So one thing I want to do is I want to build this tomb scene, and I want to build it from the viewpoint of looking at it from the outside. I may do a version next year where it's the view like you're seeing here from the inside looking out, and then have like the mountain with the three crosses. I think that'd be awesome. But anyway, we're gonna build something similar to this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do kind of like a low poly version of this tomb, this cave, and this rock. But I'm gonna show you ways of doing it that way where it actually has pretty good effect. So let's get started. Let's go ahead and clear the scene. And what I want to do is I want to bring in my first primitive, which is a cube. And I'm going to scale it down. And I'm essentially what I'm working on is I'm making one stone. So like if you went back in the video and look at the reference images, you saw all of those carved stones that look like bricks or cinder blocks. That's what we're making. Well, let's just start with one. So I give it a lot of subdivision here. And I'm going to come in here in my modifier stack and add a displace modifier. I'm going to hit new. I'm going to go to the settings and I'm going to change it to clouds. You can see the pattern there in the image, but what I want to do is I'm just giving it little bumps and divots, and I'm going to scale it down because what I'm trying to do is mimic the roughness of that stone. So we start out with the primitive shape, and then we let Blender use a modifier to calculate the roughness for us. And I'm just kind of tweaking it. I'm not looking for anything perfect because, like I said, by the time we add textures and lighting and stuff, it's going to look a lot better than what it's going to look like when we're modeling it. So now I want to turn 190 degrees on the Z-axis, and I want to create another stone because as we saw in that reference photo, these stones were stacked on top of each other, offset like bricks, like you would stack bricks building a wall or a house. We're not trying to make this exact. This is my interpretation of that scene. Alright, I'm going to make this one bigger because I don't want them looking exactly the same. There's some randomness. You could do this a lot quicker and better by going into geometry nodes and doing it that way. Maybe in the future I'll show you guys a video where you do that, but as far as this, I don't think we're there yet because my channel is really focused on teaching you modeling, and then once we got modeling down, then we'll move into other aspects of Blender. I'm trying to do this in a linear fashion when it I think makes sense, and it was the way I learned. So we're coming here and making different bricks or stones, giving them slight variations. So when you look at them in the camera, once we're done, they're not going to look exactly the same because then that clearly is a fake image when you see that, and it doesn't look as well. So now I'm going to create an array, and I'm just going to copy some of the ones that don't necessarily need to be in the forefront of the camera. I've already got it in my mind kind of how I want to set this scene up, but it's still a bit fluid because we're not done yet. Next I come in, I want to create a mesh primitive of a plane. This is going to be essentially the ground that the cave and the stones sit on. Give it a little bit of thickness with a solidify. I'm going to subdivide it because once we subdivide it, then we can go in and we can make some adjustments to the terrain of it and make it look like it has, you know, I don't want to call it hills, but like where the surface is not completely flat. I want to give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of perception of depth, and variation there. So I'm grabbing individual vertices, and then I'm doing proportional editing, and I'm just essentially moving up on the moving up with G on the Z-axis, very slightly. And as you can see, I came up a little bit more on that right-hand side. Now I'm going to come in and make another cube. This cube here is going to be essentially the primitive that makes the initial cave that the tomb is in. And I'm just going to try to keep this as simple as possible, because the purpose of this is not for me to spend all day carving out a cave, which I don't want to do for this scene. And I don't think it's going to help you guys either. And now I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to create another cube. And this is going to be like the back part of the mountain, or back part of that cave, which was that big boulder, that big rock you saw in the reference photo. I'm just creating a separate part of it. It's going to keep it a little bit lower poly, and it's going to keep it nice, and it's going to fool the eye when you see it in the camera, even though it probably doesn't look like it now. And I also want to subdivide this as well, because I'm going to sculpt this a little bit too. Now I'm going to go into sculpting mode, in the edit mode, grab a big old giant brush, I crank down the strength, and then I'm basically using a brush here to kind of give it a little bit of high areas here and there, similar to what we did with the ground plane, but I'm actually just using a brush to do this now instead of using proportional editing. Okay, that looks good enough. And as you saw, I ended up rebuilding the tomb part because the little 3 areas there just didn't look right. So I just kept it even simpler. I'm coming in here, I selected a face. Now I'm insetting it in, and I'm getting the scale of it about what it looked like in the reference photo, that last one I showed you guys. So I'm bringing it down where it looks about right. I'm gonna select the face, and I'm gonna delete the face. That's gonna make an opening. So now we got an opening to our tomb here. And I want to add a solidify modifier on it, because I want to give those walls, as you see the opening of the tomb, some thickness. Because when you see the final version here, you're going to see how light interacts with it. It's going to look pretty nice. So I'm going to extrude this out, these faces. I had some extra stuff selected in there, so I went back, cleaned it up. I did cut it on the video, but now you can see it's right. I'm going to select these faces here. I'm going to bring them out a little bit by extruding them, just to make the opening of the tomb a little bit more pronounced. And now we see the stones are like right butted up right to the front of the tomb, and I don't want that. So after I make these edits here, I'm going to move those stones a little bit further away, just to give that some opening, because as the big round stone that closes the tomb is able to move, there's actually a gap between the front of that tomb and those stones out front. So let's select these stones, including the ones that have been part of the array modifier. Okay, I got everything selected, and let's just move that out on the y-axis to give this some gap in here. That's going to allow me to put the stone in there that rolls. Okay, so now I'm going to come back in to my mesh primitives, and I want a cylinder, because it's just the quickest way to make that round stone. I'm going to turn it on X by 90, and I'm going to scale it on Y. Bring it down quite a bit, and I actually need to scale down the size because it's way too big. So let's do that. And let's look at this in front ortho so we can get a better view in terms of the perspective and context. So I'm going to scale it up. I can't really see if it's hovering above the ground in the back, so I'm going to turn on X-ray mode here in a second and take a quick look to see where my stone is. There we go. So it is hovering above the ground, so let's bring it down some. Doesn't have to be perfect because the wall is going to hide the bottom of it, but I don't want it to look fake. So I'm going to bring it back out on Y. And I'm just kind of looking at it from the top to make sure it's not going to run into the front of that tomb. So I'm grabbing these edge loops here, putting a little bevel on them just so when we run sub D on it, it tightens it up as we've done in every other video. I'm going to run some support loops in here. And what I want to do is I want to grab these faces on the side here. I'm going to do inset, 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 as you'll see. And that's just adding some geometry in here. So when we run our displace modifier on it, we actually have some geometry in here. Notice I'm not making it too dense. Now I want to come in here, I want to delete these faces. And then I want to select one face at a time, or one loop right here and grid fill it. Like I said, the purpose of this, one, is good topology practice, but number two, it's going to help with our displacement. Okay. Now I'm back in object mode, and now we're in a level 2 sub D on it and shade smooth. And right now I have a perfectly smooth stone that would block the door, but I don't want that. I want to run a displace modifier on it. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to change it to clouds again, just like we did with the stones in the front of the tomb here. And I'm just kind of tweaking on some settings here. Woo, that looks crazy. So what we want to do back here is, you know, between the cloud settings and the modifier settings itself, start playing with the strength, and then you can get the effect kind of like you want it. And as you see, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select the back of the tomb. Those faces back there, I'm going to make a new selection out of those. And now what I want to do is extrude those out, because I'm going to build the second part of that cave, or that tomb piece, that big boulder that was back there. That's what we're building here. And notice we're building all this in separate pieces. Okay, I'm going to subdivide this as well, because I'm going to run displacement on this also. Going to do literally the same thing as before. Select clouds under the type, and that's basically the noise displacement pattern or noise pattern we're using to make the displacement. You can actually make your own, which is kind of cool, and put them in here too if you like. So now I'm just going to kind of scale some stuff up, and notice now it's not such a perfect shape. It looks more like something you'd see a stone or rock, big rock made out of. And I'm tilting this one down, so when we get in the camera view, I just want to see the stuff on top of it. It's going to be in the background. You're going to barely see it. But what I'm going to do to it's going to add some nice effect. So now we've done that. Kind of looking back at the scene, trying to figure out how I want to set my camera up. So here's where the artist view, or the artist vision, comes into play here. So this is where I want to plop my camera. So I hit Control-Alt-0. I drop a camera in. And now I need to change the focal length. I want a little bit more in the scene, and then I want to shift it after I change that. Yeah, so I'm going to do a little bit wider focal length here, so I can have a little bit more in the scene. Notice I want to get the very top of that stone back there too. So I'm using the Shift X and Y to kind of tighten the camera up where I want it in terms of the composition. So now I'm selecting all these stones here, and I'm bringing them back over in the scene just a little bit more. I just want a little bit more of the stones in the camera. I don't want them so offset. And that's starting to look good. So now I'm going to go into cycles. Going to go in my Blender kit, because like I said, Blender kit saves you time. And I'm going to do a search for materials for sandstone. And I like that one, but notice the displacement on it's a bit aggressive. So now I'm kind of coming in my material settings, and I can't change what I want to change there. So now I need to go to the shading tab in Blender and look at how that material was created. And now I see displacement, because that's what I need to change. So now I'm going back in there and dialing down the scale of it. And now I'm selecting my bricks, and I'm copying that or linking that material to these other objects. To save time, just to show you guys, I'm going to select a bunch of stuff here first, and then I'm going to select one that has a material on it, and then I'm going to hit Control L and then link materials, and bam, it'll apply it to everything that was selected. That's a big time saver. So now I'm going to grab the tomb itself and do the same thing, link materials. And if you notice, it looks crazy there at the door. That is because it hasn't been UV unwrapped. That shape has not, or that model has not yet. We'll do that later. Coming back here, and I also am going to put that texture on the back part of the rock, or the cave, as I've been calling it. And now you can see I'm going in and I am doing proper UV editing. So I'm going to do a smart project. It just lays it out, but Blender kind of cuts it out for me. And since this is a fairly simple shape, it's very easy for Blender to solve the math for that, to do that properly. And now if you look at the opening of that cave, it doesn't look crazy. It looks a lot better now. Okay, and I did the back part as well. So now I'm coming in and I'm doing a texture on the ground plane. I'm looking for like a nice little gravel. And it's a bit aggressive and it's a bit large as well. So now I'm coming into the shader tab and I'm going through the material. And granted, this material came from Blender Kit as well. I didn't make it. I just pulled it in. But we can edit it and tweak it to our liking, because most of it's procedural. So I scale the rocks down and I crank the displacement of them down so they look a little bit more natural. But they're a little dark, so now I'm bringing in a gamma node, and then I'm gonna change the gamma so that it lightens the stones up a little bit to match the lighting that we have here. Right now we just got a point light that's mimicking a sunlight effect. Okay, so now that's done. And you can see this is starting to come together. Alright, I'm just kind of looking at some stuff here. So now I'm grabbing my sun lamp and I'm rotating it around because you can look at me or yourself as a director or the artist, you kind of putting the composition together. Now you're playing with lighting because lighting is a huge character in a scene. And I'm just trying to figure out what kind of lighting do I want to do on this scene. I don't yet know, but I think I end up coming up with something pretty awesome. So now I'm taking a break from the sunlighting because it's good for now. I'm going back, I'm selecting that big rock behind in the back. And I'm kind of looking around the Blender Kit for a material that I think would best suit that rock, that looks similar to what was in the reference photo, but at the same time complements the materials I've already used. And I decided to use that one. And now I'm going down to a plugin that I have, which, by the way, there is a free version of this that is on GitHub, which I will put a link to in the description. But I do have the paid version. This is called Geoscatter, and basically it uses geometry nodes, instances on points, to scatter an object X number of times at X number of distance and X number of sizes over a particular mesh. So, but this is just easy. I can just grab in a pre-made biome, which is like a number of plants and sticks and leaves and stuff put together in a nice little scene. But it also allows you to grab one thing at a time. And so now I'm coming in, I added in some grass clumps. So all I need to do is change in the density so I don't have to keep adding them in there. So I just did it twice just to show you guys. Normally I would have just done this once. And then I just cranked up the density. So now it's got a little bit denser grass clump in that one little area up there. But I can't see it, and that's the problem. So now I need to come back up here in the camera settings, and I need to do the shift Y trick and get my camera where I can see a little bit further up on top of that rock. Because in the reference photos, there was some grass up there, but it was kind of scattered here and there. It was kind of growing in cracks and crevices of the rock, and that's essentially what I'm mimicking. So what I chose to do is I tried to grab the rock that's right behind the tomb. I scaled it down on Z, and then I'm physically moving it further down so that it is not hiding the rock in the back. And now you see it looks a little bit more seamless, doesn't it? I'm using those textures and the lighting to help blend everything in. But if you look at how we modeled it, it's basically 3 cubes. That's all it is. 3 cubes with displacement modifier on them. And now I've gone in and I've changed the lighting. I decided to make it either a late night or in this case an early Sunday morning before sun comes up scene. And you'll see the light coming from the tomb, which is the power of the resurrection. For those of you who followed the Shroud of Turin, and I know some of you here who watch this video may not believe in this, so this is not meant to offend anyone, but I do believe, I am a Christian and I do believe in this, proudly. The Shroud of Turin, they're saying now with some of the tests that they don't know how the negative got imprinted into the fabric. Well, a lot of people believe it was the power of the resurrection. It was like a lightning bolt that hit. So anyway, this is my interpretation of that. So that's why we have the lighting in there. And if you notice, we rolled the stone partially in front of the door just to kind of tell the story, if you will. So now I'm coming in here in the compositor because I want to add some noise and I want to add a glowing effect to the opening of the door. But if you saw in the background, it showed the old render, which you never saw me do. So what I do to get around that is I do a new render, but you don't have to render it all the way out. You just render it partially, and then I unplug the viewer node and plug it back in, and it forces Blender to read the updated render cache. So we got that done. So now I'm gonna bring in a new node, the glare node, and that's gonna add like that cool like uh, glowy fog effect to something. And there's different attributes to this thing where you can really dial it in and tweak it. Blender just recently updated it and it's a lot nicer now. But I'm not going to go into the details of that. I just want to do the fog glow, and the default looks right. It's about how I envision that scene to look. You see a lot of bounce lighting coming off that door or coming off that stone that's in front of the door, which I like. And now what I want to do is I want to add in some grain, some film grain to the image. So now I'm going to bring in a mixed color node and a texture node. I'm going to take the mixed color node and I'm going to put it up by the image node. And I'm going to plug the image node into image A. I'm going to plug the texture with the noise into image B. And then I need to move or swap my glare node because I want it to apply the glare node first. And now I'm going to add in, for the mixed color node, I'm going to change its type to add, which is going to make some nice little white, basically it's like white noise in front of it. And then I turn that down and then I'll do a render. So here's our final render, as you can see, where the tomb is made out of literally 3 cubes. And then we got a cylinder for the stone door and then a bunch of cubes in front. If you like this type of content, please make sure to share, like, and subscribe. And there'll be more stuff coming up. Happy Easter, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your subscriptions, and I'll see you soon. Take care.
Through stormy seas and calmest nights, you've been my rock, my guiding light. For your mercy that's new each day, I'll forever sing your praise. I'll forever